I'm Kathy Johnson. Welcome to Town Talk. I'm here with Margaret Beeman, my co-host, professional horsewoman and author of 2 books. I'll show you the books, The Better Deal, and also Training for Safety, which is a driving, it's on driving, correct,
Right.
Margaret? Yes, okay. So I want to turn we have a small herd today.
All mares.
Yeah,
All mares.
all
Oh,
mares
that's
today. We have Margaret, we have Noelle, and myself, Kathy Johnson. And we're just going to do a lot of horse talk. So, and talk about some horse sense. So, Margaret, I'm going to turn the show over to you for a while, and we'll just have a nice conversation.
Well, it's a real pleasure to be back again, Kathy, and we've done. I think this is our eighth show of the season here.
Yes.
And I've just enjoyed it. We've had a wonderful group of guests and interesting women talking about horsemanship and authentic horsemanship and how it's all affected our lives. And I'm very happy with things. What we're going to do today is just talk. We have several different topics, but I want to say before we begin that this is going to be the wind-up show for this season because everybody is bursting at the seams to get out there. We've got an early spring and get out there and just work with the horses.
Right.
And my season is getting really busy, but we do plan on coming back in the fall.
Wonderful.
And with another series of shows. So just want to put that out there for now. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about barn management when you own horses.
Oh, yes.
Now, when you had your 2 horses, you owned 2 horses.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
And did you board them at a stable, or did you?
I boarded them, Margaret. I boarded them in a nearby town, Southbury.
Right.
And it was a home-owned stable with only a few people at the barn, and it was really a nice. As a matter of fact, the second horse I bought was I bought a yearling colt from the owner of that barn. His stallion sired an appendix registered quarter horse, and I bought the yearling.
Right, right. And that's one of many different scenarios of how, horses, a 1,000-pound animal, we can't just bring him home and put him in the closet. But a lot of people will board at very large public facilities. They'll board at smaller barns, or like you say, at a small private barn. And then there's a bunch of us who keep our horses in our own home, in our own pastures. Noelle you have your horses.
Yes.
How many do you have there?
3, 2 horses and a miniature donkey Daisy.
Right. But you've been on both sides.
Yes, I have.
You've boarded.
Years ago, a wonderful place. Oh, I had a wonderful time. It was called Blue Willow in Patterson or Brewster, Patterson, New York. And it was great fun.
So you started with boarding horses, and then you eventually, when you got your own place,
That's
you
right.
decided.
Of course, where I grew up, they were always at my friend Suzanne. They had a farm, so
You were able to
that
visit.
was the horses were out at the farm.
Right.
I
have to. And do you enjoy keeping your horses in your own place? Or
very much.
Okay.
Very much. I don't like to use that word control, but you do have control over what's going on.
Right.
And I enjoy the care. I enjoy the hands-on.
Right. Right.
But with knowledge, you know.
And a lot of people would like to be able to do that, but
you
they
have to have a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do, and there are a lot of people would like to do that, but they simply, with zoning laws and whatnot
Correct.
today,
Whatever you can't. That's right.
you just keep your horse however you can.
And you are alone. That's one drawback.
Yes.
That's
So,
right. Well,
yeah.
Well, with my situation, not having a barn at my own house, although I live in Oxford, and of course you can have animals in certain conditions, but my property isn't conducive. It's very
Right.
hilly.
Right.
So I couldn't keep my own horses, but I've had to, now that I'm riding again, I have to go to other barns, and you have to shop around for the right barn.
You do.
Because I found through the years where I was riding at other stables and the like, You either go to a barn that's got very snobby people, or you're at a barn where there's a bunch of young kids and a lot of yahoos who think they know everything about riding. And then there are the in-between barns where there are rules. There's strict rules. The horses are well cared for, and there isn't a lot of this Yahoo stuff. There's 2 barns in Oxford that are like that. I won't name them right now, but I'm at one of them. I'm at one of them where I take some lessons, and if anybody's interested, they can ask me sometime when they see me. But because I didn't ask the person who owns it permission to mention it.
Right.
So I'm very happy at that barn in Oxford, and I'm doing very well riding and taking lessons by Margaret's method, and the horses there are wonderful.
And I'm so glad you said you have to shop around.
Yes.
Because there's so many different combination and ways of keeping horses. The other thing is there's so many different disciplines in riding. Not just English and Western, but there's there's so many different events and things that people train for. And no, if you're a trail rider, you're not going to feel comfortable in a dressage barn.
No, you won't. You won't.
You're not. If you're a natural person and you want your horse to live outside with just a run-in shed and have his freedom all the time, you're not going to get along in a barn that stables their horses every day or every night or has limited turnout.
Right.
So those are all things that you need to think about when you go, if you're going to go out and buy a horse. And I'll bring Cynthia up where that's concerned, because Cynthia came, she was here last week. She came just getting back into horses with just taking a few trail rides, and that was one of the questions she had in her mind. I really love horses, and I don't know if maybe I'll want my own horse someday.
I heard her say that.
And that's the first question I ask people is, do you have a place at home? Or do you want to keep your horse at home? Or do you want to board the horse someplace? You better start now shopping for the barn that you're comfortable in according to your beliefs and your level of knowledge.
That's exactly right.
Many people go, and thank God we have all these public stables. People want to go find out about horses and learn about horses. And they're there to take care of you if you don't have the knowledge. And I have to say this, in the horse business, a little bit of knowledge is dangerous.
Oh, yes.
Or I had an old horseman say to me once, I have these people coming to me, they know just enough to get themselves in trouble.
That's exactly right.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, they know just enough to get themselves in trouble because they have gotten up and they have ridden and they haven't fallen off, or they've won a ribbon, or they've taken a set of lessons and it's all gone well. But there's a whole lot more to it.
Oh my goodness.
Well,
than that.
What happens is you're given a nice little school horse maybe to start out with, or you think your horse is, and then you get too confident.
Yes.
You actually think that this is how all horses act, and this horse will never act differently.
Right.
I mean, I had the surprise of my life at when you did your round pen demonstration recently. I watched the demonstration, and some of the horses were separated out for various reasons.
Well, the round pen was set up in the pasture.
Oh,
in
okay.
a part of the pasture.
Yes.
Yeah.
But some of the horses, before we got to the round pen where the pasture was, they were in the driveway area. And the horse I ride that I thought was, well, he is very calm. Don't get me wrong, he's a wonderful horse. He's very good as far as horses go. After all, he is a horse,
Right.
But he's a very nice horse and just right for my age, But when he was separated from his very favorite horse, or some of them that were in his area, I thought he was he looked like a 2-year-old running around in there.
Look at him behind you. He's a Lipizzaner. He
There
can
he
do
is.
airs above the ground.
He does
Oh,
airs
sure.
above the ground.
Airs
That's
above the
right,
ground.
He does. There he is. There's Calypso. Well, Calypso was so animated, and he was just whinnying and all that. And I went up to him to talk to him, calm him a little bit. He'd have no part of it. No. He was almost acting like he would leap over that fence. Right. And I said, oh my goodness, he's 20 years old, and there he is, Calypso. I'm looking at him. I said, look at that. If I brought my energy up on him, I probably could get him. I probably could get him a soft feel on him and get him moving with his head down. I could probably ride him like that. He would look beautiful.
Yes, he would.
Yes.
He would. And that brings me around to, you saw all of that, but would you be able, I'm going to ask this question, and I don't know if you're in on this or not, but last week Kathy mentioned some of her experiences with her favorite horse that she likes to ride.
Oh.
Yes, the one that I just expressed was quiet and jumping around.
Okay.
Like, okay.
What did you do? You got on him bareback.
Yes, I
Oh.
did. I don't know why the urge came. I was in the barn, and I was feeling very confident and good about him and myself. And I was working with mounting with the block in the barn a little bit. And I was, and I walked up on the thing, and I realized on the top stair I could really get my leg over him with a, but I said, no, this is folly. I will not get on him alone. Okay, and the owner of the barn came in, and I asked her if she wouldn't mind and be with me, and we walked bareback, and would you believe this? I was too lazy for a bridle or anything, for a bit and bridle and all that, so I said, I feel like I can just ride him in his halter, and she said, fine. I said, should we hook it to the other side? And she said, no, just ride with one rein then, so we went out into the ring, and because it was only a two-step or a shorter block, she had to give me a leg up. But there I was. We only walked, and of course I walked away very accomplished. Now, having seen Calypso just a couple of days ago, that was a little bit of folly, but then at least I had enough brains to have somebody with me.
Yes.
But please continue. That's my story for our listening audience.
Well, those are exactly, what you said is exactly what happens before something bad happens, is you were feeling confident that day. And it's a good thing to feel confident, especially when we're working through fear-based issues, which Noelle has dealt with, which I've dealt with several times in my career. When I've been hurt, I've had to get back in the saddle again if I wanted to continue working.
Right.
And my only thing is, and I keep bringing up at our age, a youngster might be able to stay on a horse bareback when he acted up like that, but at our age, we just don't move as quickly, and we're not as coordinated.
That's right.
And I would just suggest that I'm so happy for you that you had that moment of joy, and I'm so happy that nothing happened.
Thank you.
But I would just suggest from now on, when you get to be a certain age, you should have a saddle on a horse.
Yeah. I mean, I thought,
you should.
there I was bragging my little heart out, and Margaret here, and I did want you to tell our audience that. I think that that's very important for people's safety.
You took me by surprise last
Yeah.
week
Yes,
when
I
you
did.
said
Yeah, I think she did. I'm surprised at that.
Because I am a fearful rider.
Right.
I am basically a fearful rider because I
Well-
have taken a fall years ago.
Right, but I think I remember, oh gosh, I have a very dear friend who I grew up with, Suzanne. They live way down at Westport Island in Maine, and on the way down to her house, these wonderful horses in the pasture. They were older horses. And this was, I don't know, 20 years. It wasn't that long ago. And I remember waiting for Suzanne, and I was down to the house, and I just was in that pasture. I did it as a joke, and there's an old horse, and I climbed up on the back of this horse. And I was sitting there while the horses were grazing. And I was probably, in my 40s, 50s or whatever, but I did it as a, but I just knew that these horses weren't going to go anywhere, but I just sat there. So it's this fantasy you have. You have to be careful. I think one has to be careful of that.
you
You're no
have to-
longer this kid that could go and jump on a horse and just take off. And
Well,
I did that when I was a kid, and that was my first horse.
Sure.
And I put a piece of hay rope around him, and we went galloping through the pasture.
And it's a difficult thing
But,
I worked with a veterinarian friend of mine who we talked a lot about children and horses
Sure.
and things like that, and how
what
you start
kids
out,
do.
and the helmet for safety, which is good and everything. And
Yeah.
she said, God, Margaret, she said, remember, we'd be alone.
Yes.
our parents nowhere in sight. I would
Right.
ride between 5 and 8 miles away from my
Right.
house
We did it
as a
too.
6 and 7-year-old child
Yes.
with no helmet.
Nothing.
Lots of times
Right.
bareback or whatever.
Yes.
We had a herd of horses that we managed. And those are things that in your heart you know you can do or you want to do, and you want to be free and you
Right.
want to be natural.
Right.
But you just have to bring common sense into the picture.
Right.
Oh, you know, that's right. And let me interject here. I
That's
mean,
right.
here is
'Cause
someone.
we've done that.
Here
We've done
I
that.
am. I'm going to tell the audience. I'm not afraid to say my age. I'm 72 years old. I'll be 73 in June. Okay. I went out. I bought the best helmet I could find. Not only that, I bought one of those inflatable vests.
Yeah.
That's like an airbag that attaches to the saddle. I took every precaution because I know that I have to be careful. A fall could be the end of my riding.
Did that eliminate your fear?
You know, I don't know whether it really did or didn't. I'm going to say not necessarily so. And the thing was, there were two prongs to that. Am I going to feel overly confident because if I go off, my vest will inflate? Or am I going to feel even more afraid? What if it doesn't inflate? So it really, I guess it was just like driving in a car, putting your seatbelt on.
Exactly. It was a
And that
precaution.
It was
Right.
a
a bit of
precaution.
insurance.
It helps.
Yeah, what I've since I can't remember, way back when I started working more so with adults than children, as my daughter was growing up. I worked with many children up through the years, through the 4-H groups and stuff like that. But most of the adults that I work with have fear-based problems. They've been off, they've been hurt, and they don't know. And years ago, my father said to me, when I became afraid, we were learning trick riding for the rodeo, and I did the hippodrome stand. My brother vaulted, and my father wanted me to vault also. And he didn't put a whole lot of time into preparing me. He said, what you do is if you feel you're going to come off, you basically tuck and roll. This is how we were taught in the old
Sure.
days. And so he said, lean forward, and he just took me and rolled me. But he caught me by surprise, so I jumped, and when I landed, it hurt.
Oh.
Sure.
So I didn't want to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
I didn't
it.
want
That
to.
was
I
the end of it.
didn't want to
Right.
do it, and it took him the rest of that summer working with me to overcome that fear. And his phrase to me, what he said to me is, Margaret Ann, fear is ignorance, and ignorance is not knowing. So you're afraid because you don't know what might happen. That's why you're afraid. Let's look at it and see what can happen. And that's how he taught me to overcome fear, by taking control through knowledge and learning. And that's how I teach people with fear-based problems. Is I start out with, okay, you're looking at it from this perspective, and many times people will just watch for several lessons. Sometimes they'll get involved, and I get them involved on the ground with the horse and focusing on the horse's feet, seeing how the horse moves and the kind of moves that he makes. And then you know what you're going to get up on and what you're going to ride. You have a feeling for your rein, because your rein is the rope on your rope halter, your leg because your flag
Yes.
is your leg. And we
Right.
put the time into learning exactly what's going on, so you have full knowledge of what you're doing and you can make a decision. You don't have sort of an idea of what riding's all about because you've taken some riding lessons, but riding lessons doesn't really teach you
No.
about the horse.
No.
And I say that with great confidence, because everyone that has come to me that has ridden for years and taking riding lessons say to me, I never learned this.
That's right.
Yeah.
You said that to me.
I did, and what the other aspect of that is safety.
Yes.
That your method is the best method I've ever seen on preparing you to be safe.
That's right, because you know what you're doing.
That's
you learn,
right.
You learn what the horse is and what you're working with, what could happen, what couldn't happen, how the horse can move, how he can't move, how to see the movement coming, how to redirect it so that it doesn't happen. And it's just, it's a whole training thing, which brings me to one of the things that we're going to talk about today is every year, it usually happens in January and February, which I have with most of my students have had this conversation, but I wanted to bring it on the show today because it's the last show of the season. What are your goals for this year? And when I ask new students that, they just look at me. And I say, you need to have a plan, an actual conscious thought about what you want to accomplish. Well, I just want to be able to ride and go on a trail ride. That's too general. That's way too general. What does it take to go on that trail ride? And what I usually start people off with the workshops, even students that have been with me for 6 or 8 years, we start from the ground up. We revisit all of those things that we learn because we as humans can multitask. And we learn those things and we just take it for granted that we know them and on we go. Right. And we don't practice them.
Well, you know, that brings me to a couple of things. I think I know, and you'll tell me if I don't know. I know that. Okay. I learned the hard way that it's better to stay with the horse than bail out. Okay? That's what I thought in my mind.
I've bailed out before.
Okay, all right. I mean, I told the story how I was in one stirrup and he started to walk away, and I said, well, I'm going to take 2 reins, stop him. While I'm standing in that stirrup, he got confused and started to canter. Now I'm on a horse cantering in one stirrup. Of course, I was way younger, and I said, well, do I throw my leg over or do I bail? And I bailed. But you know.
It's one of the first things I teach when people tell me they want to ride, is I teach them the emergency dismount. Okay. And at our age, it's not an easy thing to do.
No.
But I usually will make people do it at least once or twice. And with the children, working with when I had the group of children I was working with, they had to be able to do an emergency dismount at the walk, the trot, and the canter.
How do you do that?
With the adults, the walk and trot. And now that I'm working with much older adults, somebody just recently told me we're now all classified. Once you get to be 60, you're considered old.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
But anyway, with all the people that I work with, I make them do it from the standstill and at the walk if they feel they can. Because, you know, you don't want too much impact coming off the horse. But basically, your emergency dismount is training yourself to bail safely.
Okay.
Right.
And the reason a lot of people get hurt is because they try to stay on.
Oh, yeah.
They have some ego-based idea in their head that that's the thing to do. I can't come off. I can't get bucked off. I can't fall off.
Okay.
You know, I need to stay on this horse. I need to. Most humans feel that's control. You have to stay with the horse. If you bail, you've lost control. Well, think of it this way: a horse is a herd animal. And if you bail from your horse, he's going to come back to you.
Right. And that happened to me in a field across my house.
Okay.
And a dear friend had given me a bridle, old reins. There was some old leather. And it was Willie, my Willie. And we were cantering away from the house, cantering in this wonderful field. And we were going a pretty good clip. And my right rein broke.
Oh, no.
Or my left rein broke. My left rein broke. And I'm going, oh. So I go, okay. I didn't change anything. Willie was enjoying himself. So what I did, I remember methodically removing my feet from the stirrups. That's the first thing I thought about. I'm getting ready because I just don't want to. I'm going to go off. I'm going to deliberately go off, but I need to stop this horse. And I remember thinking, well, the worst thing that could happen, he's going to run back home.
That's right.
It's too dangerous because I don't want him to go across that road because there's a road.
And no rein for an emergency stop either, huh?
Well, I had one rein.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And I hadn't worked with Margaret yet, so if I'd probably, did some half halts on him, I might have. So there was a stance of young trees, and I'm going, okay. So everything I did was planned, and I wasn't getting nervous about it because I said I can always bail out. But I didn't want to lose him because I didn't want him to run and get hurt crossing the road. So I pulled on that right rein and I disengaged his hind end going at a pretty good clip. And I put him against the trees. And I went off, I anyway, I was on the ground, kind of standing up
Oh,
somehow. And I can't remember. And he looked at me and he goes, "What happened?" So, and they were there. And then I got back up on, and I tied the rein to the other and rode home.
Well, that
So
comes
that
from
was
just listening to the story. She was conscious enough to be in the moment, realized have some sort of a plan, and I'm sure it went like.
It went quick.
Her mind went a lot
Quickly,
faster.
yeah.
It went a lot faster
A lot
than that.
faster than that.
But the fact that she knew enough to pull her feet out of the stirrups, that's the first thing
Oh.
you
Lose your
do.
stirrups.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
the first thing you should do. Actually, the first thing you should do is throw your reins away.
oh.
Oh,
And I'll tell you why.
I didn't dare do that. I had one rein.
You toss the reins as your feet come back out of the stirrup,
Oh.
and you push down on the cantle and throw your leg out and jump off. And
Oh,
the-
like you were just
Right.
doing a dismount.
And the reason you do that is I've seen this happen too, where somebody
Oh.
did that. They bailed, but they kept a rein.
Oh.
And they pulled the horse right over on top of her.
Oh.
Oh, no.
You see that, and
Yeah,
that's the
that
thing.
could have
You don't
happened.
want to let your horse go
Yeah.
because maybe you're riding out in
Yeah.
a pasture, but the horse, in order to get back to the barn, has to cross a road. So
Yeah.
that puts you in panic mode because you got a loose horse running on a road.
That's why I hung on.
So
Yeah.
Which could have been
simultaneously,
dangerous, yeah.
as you're getting out of the stirrups, you're dropping the rein,
Right.
and your hands on the saddle.
Yeah, you don't hold on. You use it as you push yourself off. You literally bail off, push yourself out of the saddle as you throw your leg up
Oh,
over.
okay. So the hands are there. That's why they're off the rein.
Right.
You're pushing and.
And
And
the
if you-
horse going forward and you pushing, that will, because of that
that'll
horse
help you come
forward
on.
movement will help you.
And
Go
with
back-
the,
yes, yes.
Yeah, with the kids, of course, with the kids, not with us older folks, but with the kids could do that at the walk, the trot, and the canter. They fell down a few times, but after a while they could bail
And stand.
off a horse and stand. But the main reason I taught it is just like when you go into a public building you've never been in before, you look up for the exit signs
Yes.
in case there's a fire.
Yes.
That's your emergency exit. That's your emergency dismount. And if you can get that instilled in your mind before anything happens, when that happens, you have a plan. And you must have known somewhere in your life or somehow somebody told you about bailing off a horse.
Somebody must have,
And
yes.
she knew that was the safe thing to do.
Would that be worth
Right.
practicing while the horse is standing still?
You can do that when the horse is standing still.
Drop the reins and kick and do a dismount right there,
Right.
just to get the feel of it. Yeah.
Right.
You mentioned something too about what you hope to accomplish.
Right.
I want to tell you what I hope to accomplish. I'm hoping to learn to ride by feel. I'm hoping that I start to ride well at the walk and trot. I haven't thought too much about the canter yet,
Right.
but I'm hoping that I do accomplish knowing where the horse's feet are and learning. I'm starting to learn that feel. This year I'm hoping to learn
To connect the rein.
Yeah, where Calypso's back foot is, how he's moving, and getting that feel instead of, because I used to think that you cramped one leg in the front so that you could get a canter from the proper lead in the direction you're going. Now it's been a long time. If you're cantering or riding to the right, you want the outside leg, right? Or the inside leading.
I teach maybe a little bit differently than
Okay.
what people, as far as the sequence of the footfall and the canter. If you want to canter in the right lead, the left hind foot is the foot that reaches up and
But
pushes
what
you
is the
into
correct lead that you should be on in horse shows if you're going to your right?
the right lead if you're going to the right.
Right.
Oh, so the outside leg.
The outside, it doesn't
or
matter
the
what.
inside.
Right. It doesn't matter if your lead is in the right. Most people learn to recognize a canter and a lead by the leading front foot.
That's it. That's what I was
Right.
saying to you. Yeah.
Which is correct. That if you see that, the thing of it is where it comes from. It comes from the engine,
the back.
right? Which is the left hind foot.
Okay.
Is
So-
beat number one. Canter is a 3-beat gait. So beat number one is your left front foot coming up and pushing. Beat number two, the horse is in a diagonal and then the third is the leading front foot.
And at what point would you give the cue to go into the canter?
Whenever you wanted to. You pick up a soft heel and prepare your horse, get him shaped. I teach people, you don't just, you know, a lot of horses that are trained for show, it's just a little touch with the heel or whatever. Most of the people I work with are trail riders and whatnot. They don't want to be very finely tuned, but they want to be able to get their horse into a canter.
So so Margaret, that was that was my thought. Is what I want to learn for the walk and the trot is the feel of where his hind leg is
To get into it.
and do that.
And
yes.
that's a realistic, safe goal to start with.
Yes.
That's a very sensible goal to start with. Many people, when they get involved with horses, are like they want to go ride and then they want to canter and they want to canter. And my favorite expression, it was said to me once, and it only once, and it's like, well, if you can't do it at the walk, why would you want to do it at the trot and canter?
That's right.
If you can't do it at the walk, if you can't get your horse to do a figure eight around these cones and walk through these poles and back through, if you can't maneuver your horse and have control of all four quarters, why would you want to add speed?
Correct. Right.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And that's a common set. That takes all of the the fun out of it. A lot of people say a lot of the fun out of it, and maybe it is taking the fun out of it, but it's giving you a safer start to when you do decide to pick up that canter.
Well, I think that comes from too many people watching Western movies and watching The Lone Ranger and thinking that everything he did with silver you can do. You know?
Exactly. Yes, thinking that's all that goes into it.
That's right.
You know, and what brings it up, I spoke with Lois about this a few times with a few things that she brought up to me with her horses, and I think Ray Hunt is the one that I heard say it, is when you say your horse does spook or your horse is running, like in Noelle's situation, you say to yourself and to your horse, I can ride as fast as you can run. Rather than to try to stop what's going on, just get with it and do what you have to do in that moment, which is what you did. You took your feet out of the stirrups.
You took sort of control of the situation.
Exactly. And this brings us around to, that's why I ask people to think seriously, and that's why I developed, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, I started setting up bi-weekly workshops at my place, and then I broke them down into series of 4, and it was for specific topics that people wanted to work on. And I said to people, I guarantee you if you come to all 4 of those classes, by the end you'll meet your goal. And I had a few people say, you can't say that, you can't predict that that's going to happen. And I said, well, if they show up and they put the time in, if they have the time and the desire to learn, they'll learn how to do that, or they will know full well why they can't do it, and they'll know what to work on so that they can accomplish it. And it goes deeper with the horsemanship. You go deeper into it than, oh, you can't do that, or, oh, what are you afraid? Or, oh, you're just not strong enough, or you can ride that horse and you can't ride this horse. That's not what it's all about.
Oh, that's a terrible, just by you saying that.
The competition that goes on.
Feeling. I don't like.
And that's the one thing with the horsemanship, you don't get that at all.
No.
You know, you get everybody supporting everybody and people that are interested in how other people learn, and you share experiences that help the other people through it. And it's just simply learning how to get along with the horse in the most humane way possible and meeting your goals is all that goes into it. And I have to stress that setting a goal and writing it down on the calendar is just schedule time on a regular basis, because one actual fact about the horse is the horse is a creature of habit.
They love it.
Yeah.
They love consistency and
habit.
Yes. And if you're consistent about how you're communicating with your horse and what you expect out of your horse, when you're rewarding your horse, that's why the specific footwork.
Right.
Because you learn how to get with that horse, and you learn to be conscious and be in the moment in that time frame, so that you are moving the horse, so that it is him yielding to you, so that you do have control. And that's what we build on. And I don't know of any way to do that other than to put in consistent time and effort.
Well, that's it. I don't think that people realize. And when I was younger and riding, my riding got better, and my confidence got better when I was riding at least 3 to 4 times a week.
Right.
You have to be consistent, and I think that when I was learning from the ground, when the weather was good, I was up at the barn at least 3 times a week on my own, working with the horse, which helped. I have a question that I'll bet people who do ride or who are learning to ride in a conventional way. When I was learning to ride at the canter as a younger person, I had a very bad habit, and I still do, of throwing my body forward into the canter, which I found that always made a horse go, no, I don't want to canter. As soon as you do, no, you're not helping me canter. And of course, the instructor would say, sit up, sit up.
Sit up, get off his shoulders, sit up, get off his shoulders. Line your heel and your ear on your hip.
Yeah, but I couldn't mentally do that.
Right.
My body wanted to go forward, either out of protection or whatever.
Right.
What say you, Margaret?
Well, the difference between, I don't know if we can break it down specifically, but let's say learning to ride the canter, or just basically learning to ride. You wanted to go faster. So you automatically, that's just, I want to go.
Reaction.
Yeah, I'm expecting him to go, so yeah.
What I say to people, your riding lessons teach you your ear, your shoulder, your hip, and your heel all have to be in place. They teach you about your posture and how you're supposed to sit. What that does when somebody instructs you to do that is it puts you all in your body and yourself, and you're constantly thinking, is my leg back here, is my hip back here, and you really lose a lot of your direction and your forward motion telling your horse to go, because the energy in your body is going within, and it's thinking about what you look like and what you.
Right.
Okay?
That's right.
Right.
I have one rule, and that is, I want you to say to yourself constantly, no matter where you are or what you're doing with the horse, if it's in a canter depart or at the canter, doesn't matter the trot, what you say to yourself, if my horse disappears, will I land on my feet? That's all you need to know. If you're sitting on your horse and you imagine your horse disappearing, if you're sitting in a bench seat,
I see what you mean.
if you're sitting in a bench seat with your feet forward of your hips, you're going to land on your butt. If you're going like this, you're not going to land on your feet.
So you don't have to be like.
I tell people, remember the little plastic cowboys that
Yes,
were shaped like this?
I used to love them. And
Oh
they'd
yeah,
set 'em up. Yes.
You take them off the horse and they're on the
and they're standing up.
So rather than to think, where's my shoulder, is my heel under my hip, think of that. Look at where you're going, look at what you want to do, and just say, am I going to land on my feet? Am I balanced? Do I feel balanced? Do I feel like I land on my feet if he goes away? And that's where you start. You're balancing on your seat bones. You're balancing on your horse's center of balance. You're not squeezing him with your legs. You're not throwing your weight back or throwing your weight forward. It's like giving somebody a piggyback ride. Think of somebody who's sitting on your back, and if they lean forward or they lean this way or that way.
Right, they're trying to balance.
Right, and a horse has a center of balance, and if you can learn to balance on your seat bone as you're going, and starting at the walk is a very good way to do it. You can do it without stirrups or with stirrups. Okay, and then just get in a habit, train yourself to get in that habit of saying, I want to go up here and turn around that barrel. Am I going to land on my feet? Do I feel like I'm going to land on my feet? Let's go. And it's helped many of my students be able to drive their horse forward and actually ride, because they're not thinking back here of their body and what they're looking for.
You know, that's very good. And I have a tendency to feel most comfortable when I'm riding in a longer stirrup.
Yeah.
I like a stirrup that's almost, just there.
Right.
I feel more
Well,
comfortable.
I tell people your stirrups are basically, all your stirrups are there for us to catch your balance. okay? And it just depends on the style of riding. Most people with shorter stirrups are competitive riders, or cross-country. You know, I look at a lot of the endurance riders. They don't have short stirrups.
No, they're long.
You know, it's mainly for show and competition that you do that. So if you're just riding for pleasure, you want to feel safe, you want to be safe. You want your horse to be comfortable with you up there. You don't want to interfere and give him signals that...
Right, unnecessary signals.
Okay, and the way to do that is to be comfortable and be balanced up there. And then another thing I tell folks is as you take up on the rein, the more pressure you have to apply to get what you want. If your horse doesn't understand, the deeper and more secure your seat becomes. So as you take up on your rein, if your horse is resisting, or your horse goes and you need to say, wait a minute, you got to. When you do that, the more you have to pull, the deeper and more secure your seat gets, rather than to grab for a rein and pull yourself forward and bring your seat up off the horse. You should come back down onto your horse.
Yeah. And take a breath, and you breathe out, and you feel yourself go down into the saddle.
So sitting up is correct. You should sit up. But sitting up can mean, people who ride with a bench seat, saddle seats, anything like that, their backs are straight as an arrow.
Yes. Yes, I see pictures of me in my little horse shows like that.
Yeah, and that's equitation. That's the look of the rider. That's the conformation of the rider on the horse. That has nothing to do with as far as I'm concerned, to communication between a horse and rider. That isn't really the best posture, because if you're not very confident and don't ride a lot, you're not going to feel very balanced. Like you said, with your shorter stirrups, you're perching.
You're perching.
Yes,
That's right.
You have to have more balance to do that. You don't have the security
like the hunt seat,
your legs being down, down around the horse.
Yeah, that's like a half seat, right?
Yeah, that's like in a hunt seat, sure.
Yeah.
And I tell people, when you're riding, all of your weight belongs below your belly button. Okay, all of your weight belongs down there. You ride with that intent that everything is in your seat. Everything goes down. Because if you're sitting there right now and I said something that startled or frightened you, you'd go like that, and where does your weight go?
Yeah.
And when you go up, you've lost your seat.
Well, this is where the fear factor comes in, because now you're stiff up there, you're worried, and it's going through to the horse. I do have moments where I feel very, very relaxed, and the horse is very, very relaxed, and we're going along just the way you describe, everything, with feel. But then my mind will say, oh, maybe, what if he jumps, or what if he does something?
Anticipating something that hasn't happened
That's
yet?
Right, an anticipation. Has that happened to you?
Oh, sure. I always anticipate.
Yeah, your mind is your own worst enemy.
The mind is like, you anticipate things that aren't there,
and that's why if you have experienced something like that, you should be in a group, or you should be with supportive people who will teach you, and you can train yourself when that thought starts to come up. Just don't allow that thought to breathe deeply.
Yeah. Now, I just was given the cue by our producers and directors there that we have the 15-minute cue. About a minute ago, she gave that to me. And so we can keep talking, but I want Margaret to know, because I want you to be able to get in the last things you want to say to our audience before we recess to the fall.
Right. Well, I think the most important thing I wanted to bring across today is we all need to have a plan.
Goals, yes.
Yeah, and we need to set a goal for don't, you can have, it's one of the first questions I ask a new student is, what's your goal?
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
Yeah.
And it's okay to say things like, I've always wanted to be a Grand Prix dressage rider. That's fine with me.
That's great.
That's
me
fine.
too.
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't mean that you can't experience what goes into that. And that's what I teach people is, if this is your goal, let's break it down into steps. You need to be able to accomplish all of these things to get there. So let's start here. and let's start working on it. And then that way there, when you get you've been working 2 years, maybe 3 years, and you have a bad day. And this inevitably happens with all my students. I'm just so discouraged. I thought I would do so much more. I said, you are discouraged. Let's think back. Where were you at this time last year? Look at all the things you couldn't do. Now look at all the things you can do.
That's right.
And there's nothing wrong with knowing that you'll never be that grand dressage rider. And there's also nothing wrong in working towards being that grand dressage.
That's fun.
And that brings
That's
me...
fun, exactly.
Yes.
That is fun.
Yeah,
it is.
I'll never stop having those fantasies.
Those fantasies. Yeah, I want to be...
Greater than I am.
I want to be the first woman to ride in Vienna at the Spanish riding school.
Oh, yeah.
That brings me to something that we've all heard. I want to be one with the horse.
Yes.
Well,
And
yes,
this is exactly, Margaret, everybody in dressage says, I want to be one with the horse.
Right.
But they can't be one with the horse unless they use your method, because
it's not unless they use them, unless they understand the horse. You
have to understand the horse.
You need to get over the fact that no matter how smart you are or how many hours you ride, until you take time to actually study the horse and what it is that you're riding,
Right.
and what's important to him, that isn't going to come together totally. People say, like with the Round Pen Clinic, a few people noticed it. If you watch a master work with the horse, if you watch Buck Brannaman work a horse, or if you watch him ride a horse, that's what you see. You see that oneness.
Yes.
It's because that man understands horses so well. I was taking money being a horse trainer. For my whole life I've been a horse trainer, and then I got hurt really badly, and the only thing I could do was work with horses because of my situation. And I realized, I went to a Ray Hunt clinic, and I realized it doesn't matter that I've ridden my whole life. It doesn't matter that I'm a third-generation horsewoman. It doesn't matter that I've ridden 20 different disciplines and I've driven also. None of that mattered. What mattered was I needed a deeper understanding of the horse so I could be safe. And that's what I offer people, a deeper understanding of this 1,000-pound animal who's a different species that you have these fantasies about. You can realize a lot of them, but have a little respect for the horse.
Right.
You want your horse to respect you and be trained and take care of you and be good. What are you doing for him? It doesn't matter how much feed you dump into him. It doesn't matter how much you groom him. None of that matters. It doesn't matter that you have 6 feet of bedding in his stall. Most people lock them up in a box and they treat them like human beings, and they think they take the best care of their horses. A horse that's on the circuit and in competition and training is kept a whole lot different than backyard horse owners or amateur riders.
And you know, Margaret and Noelle, my horses were happier when at the first barn I was in, when they were with a 3-sided, out in the winter, out all around, coming in to eat. Or if it's really bad, you know, they were happier being free, and having.
They have a fear of confinement, and we lock them. And that's a fact about a horse, about the equine, and we lock them up in box stalls. I'm not saying that it's wrong to put a horse in a stall, if it fits the style, if it fits what's going on in his life. But folks that don't have the horses in a regular program, it's not really a good thing.
It's not really a good thing.
No.
And there was something else on my mind. Now let me think for a minute. Just a minute, it'll come to me.
That's all right.
I'm having one of the
that's
my little
understandable.
senior moment. Wait a minute.
'Cause my horse was in a-
One thing I wanted to bring up, Margaret, is when you first are learning, or even when you go back to riding, you have, let's say, several weeks where it's coming together and things are going nice, and then all of a sudden it falls apart. The horse isn't quite right that day, or something happens and goes wrong. That's a common thing, isn't it?
It's a common thing, and it's a human characteristics.
Yeah.
A characteristic. You know, you're taking the horse is governed by the laws of nature. It's an animal. It's governed by the laws of nature. We humans have civilization, and the laws and things are differently. There's so many differences between the horse and the person, and that generally happens because we take things for granted.
Okay.
And in nature, you don't take you
things
have
for-
to be conscious and aware all the
All
time.
the time. Now, we're down to our 10 minutes, and I want to say that this is a great show. I think I'm telling my audience already. I'm telling you, it's a great show. It's a great show. I'm telling you. Okay. No, this is a good show with the three of us here. But Margaret, I think there's a few things you probably want to tell the audience before we recess to the fall. And I have both of your books here if you want to say a little something about them. And you know, we're going to have about 5 minutes in a little while. So
Well, the books, as far as the books go, you know, any book, you know, I read a lot. You know, I've read tons of material. Seeing things in real life is another way of learning, and it's why I offer classroom classes to go over that and discuss all that, because you're putting together the horse and the human, and they're two very different things, and there's a lot to learn about both of them. And my talk about setting goals for the year, try to be consistent with your horse. Try to have, like you've got, okay, I want to learn how to gain control of the feet. So you have a specific thing you're working on, and there are several things you can do to work on that. Find a professional who you get along with and who answers your questions in a way that make you feel like you can attain that goal. Make sure you understand what it is you're doing and that you have to find your goal. Make sure that the person you're working with has the knowledge of the horse and the safety at hand. And the one way when I was learning from people, I love it if I talk to a professional or a master and I ask them a question, they come out and say, I don't know, but I can find out.
Okay.
Be honesty, and that's what I'm saying. The horse is honest. Most people aren't, and a lot of times we're not honest with ourselves about what our true capabilities are, and there's nothing wrong with admitting that we might need a little help.
Yep. Now, we have 5 minutes, so I want people to know, Margaret, how they can get a hold of you. You're on Facebook. We don't have I don't think we have the photo right now.
No, but we have something that there's three of us sitting here.
Okay.
And this is what we're going to do.
Great.
We're going to have all three of us say goodbye to the audience with this photo, and it's going to have my email address up. There's my
okay.
there's
There
my
you
contact.
are.
If you
Okay.
have any questions at all,
Let's keep it up like that.
I'm available by email for any questions. If you go to my website or you email me or go to my email is on the website or you text me, there's a schedule up of all the classes that I'm holding, all of the workshops I'm giving, and you can find out where to learn more about what I do. If you have your own trainer or professional you work with, please just set a schedule for the year in respect out of your horse. And do we have our little closing photo that we can put
all right.
up?
Well, there it
there
is.
it is.
There it
There's
is.
all three of us saying goodbye.
Oh, that's wonderful.
We're all leaving. There we are.
We're off for the riding season,
There I
driving
am on
season.
yeah, there's Noelle in the middle.
There you
you
go.
are. There you are. And there's Margaret's.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah, when Dorothy brought this up in the studio, I said, well, I've got some stock photos. I said, this is perfect. There's three of us,
Perfect.
and there's three of us walking away out and riding off into the sunset, saying goodbye for the season, and we really are looking forward to coming back this
really?
fall.
Can't wait.
And in the meantime, please just be serious about setting your goals and
Right.
working with your own professional, or you're more than welcome to come see me or visit me and learn.
Can't
Okay,
wait.
and can I ask our producers to keep, when I sign off, I'd like to sign off right in the camera in the middle here, where all three of us are sitting here. If
Yeah.
you could keep that on. We have 1 minute, so I'm going to take that minute to say, Margaret, Noelle, thank you for being here. Until we meet again, happy trails in the fall, throughout the summer. I want to tell everyone to have a good evening and a better tomorrow. And watch for my show. It's going to be weekly. We're going to have different guests on, but I'm looking forward to having Margaret and all the cowgirls with me in the fall. So take care, and just happy pony trails to everyone.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Kathy. Thank
You're
you.
You're welcome, ladies.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
It's a
you.
pleasure to have